Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending. Good evening to everyone and welcome to the inauguration ceremony of the Tel Aviv Center for Combating Pandemics. I'm Professor Itai Ben-Har from the Faculty of Life Sciences and the director of the center. Now, a few words about the center. So when COVID-19, the pandemic began some 10 months ago, we at Tel Aviv University recognized that to cope with this imminent crisis, on one hand, and the anticipated next wave of COVID or other infections, we must have the tools and protocols in place that will enable us to quickly perform analysis and tests, develop vaccines and treatments, and contain the crisis in a timely manner, all the while keeping the public safe and resilient and safeguarding the economy. Therefore, we launched the Tel Aviv University Center for Combating Pandemics, the first of its kind in Israel and probably in the world. I'll tell you in a minute why. Building on the multidisciplinary culture of our campus and strong links with hospitals and industry. Now, before I tell you what the foci of the activities of the center are, the reason why we are so unique is that we were the first ones to come up with a center that is really all-encompassing. It brings together all 9 faculties of Tel Aviv University. There are centers for dealing with pandemics and other crisis situations, but none of them, to the best of my knowledge, are indeed so multidisciplinary. So the center we are inaugurating formally this evening has actually 4 main foci. One is building up biomedical know-how for rapid and effective response. The second is improving national frontline preparedness. The third is planning for social and economic resilience. And the fourth is forming an all-discipline conversation on campus, which would hopefully lead to the formal 3. The inauguration of the center was made possible by, first of all, strong commitment of Tau leadership. Second, enthusiastic enrollment of Tel Aviv University investigators from all over campus. And third, perhaps most important, the generous support of benefactors, which are among our speakers this evening, will be acknowledged by Tel Aviv University President in a few minutes. And I am, of course, grateful to all of them. Now, before I invite Tel Aviv University President, Professor Ariel Porat, I invite viewers that have a burning question to any of the speakers this evening to write them in the chat box. Now, this ceremony is not a discussion forum, but we may be able to address a few of the questions at the end of the ceremony, if Tao permits. Now, I am pleased to invite the next speaker, our president, Professor Ariel Porat.
Thank you very much, Itai. I think what I am going to do in the next 2 or 3 minutes is to tell you about the history of this new center, how we came out with this idea and how it became possible to establish a multidisciplinary center for combating pandemics. I believe that the only one, as far as I know, in the world, which is A, about pandemics, not just about the corona, but about combating pandemics generally, and B, it's multidisciplinary. It combines many fields which are not just the core science, which is biology or virology or epidemiology, but also other fields like economics and law and sociology and psychology, and you name it. And you'll see in a few minutes, that even history has something to do with combating pandemics. So it started, at least for me, when we realized, I think faster than any other university, that the COVID-19 pandemic is a multidimensional event. It's not just about biology. And as I said before, it's not just about epidemiology. it's about everything, right? And so at the beginning, just a few weeks after the pandemic broke out, we established a platform in which we invited researchers from all over the country. Altogether, it reached the number of close to 1,000 professors from Tel Aviv University, but also from other institutions. And we provided memos and we established consulting groups that helped the Israeli governments and the agencies of the Israeli government to think about the corona and about related issues. And then we realized how important it is to think comprehensively, right? To look at the event from different angles. Now, then there was a second stage in which we, Tel Aviv University, initiated a joint enterprise with the Israeli Mossad, and together with the research institutes in Israel, we composed a group of researchers, about 15 researchers. I was the head of this committee, but it has been composed from researchers from Tel Aviv, from Weizmann, and from actually all the 7 research universities in Israel. And we worked for 7 days, day and night, together with the Mossad, and we came out with an exit strategy from the lockdown that we were in just before Passover, starting from Passover. After Passover, and so we designed a very good program. This is actually what we call the Ramzor program, right? The red, green, and yellow neighborhoods or cities. This actually came out from this group, together, as I said, with the Mossad. The Mossad brought it to the Prime Minister, and unfortunately, the Prime Minister did actually nothing with the program. Now we know that probably it was a kind of a political issue, that it's not so easy to close some neighborhoods which are ultra-Orthodox or Arabs and so on. But whatever the reason was, actually the program that we designed has not been implemented. I think it was a misfortune, and I believe that after, in the next weeks or so, there is a good chance that this program would be implemented by Israel. Ronnie Gamzot, for those of you who know the name, is the one who leads the exit from lockdown. And so this is a contribution of Tel Aviv University and other research institutes. Anyway, when I and other people at the university realized that we need to tackle this phenomenon, right, the corona pandemic, seriously from different angles, we thought that it would be a good idea to have a center that would combine all fields together. But for that, you need funds. So what I did, actually, I called my good friend, Frank Lowy. You are going to hear from him in a couple of minutes. So I talked to him through Zoom. I think that was the first time that I succeeded to raise funds through Zoom. It's not easy. So I talked to Frank, and I was lucky to meet before, actually having lunch together at his wonderful home. And I asked him whether he would be, Amos, would you? Okay. So I asked him whether he would be able to help us, kind of, with startup money to establish this center. And Frank listened to me carefully, and then he said, okay, let me think about it. So at the beginning, I thought, that it's like, don't call me, I'll call you. But fortunately, it was different this time. 3 days later, I think, Frank called me and said to me that he decided to help us with a substantial, significant gift to Tel Aviv University to establish this center. Later on, we have a General Assembly of the Board of Governors through Zoom. And at the end of the Zoom, my very dear friend, Gary and Kathy, Gary Ryans and Kathy Fields Ryans, called us immediately after the Zoom meeting that we had together with our Board of Governors and surprised us. with a very generous gift to Tel Aviv University for combating the crisis. So that was the second very important contribution that made it possible for us to establish the center. And then I talked also to Asher Regan and from Yad Hanadiv, who is also here with us today. And Yad Hanadiv decided, I also want to thank to Ariel Weiss, the president of the director of Yad Hanadiv, and also to Asher. And they also made efforts to dedicate funds to establish activities which are more related to social sciences. And as I said before, combating the pandemics is also about social sciences, and actually everything is connected to the pandemics. So eventually, altogether, we also got, I should also mention that we also got support, even actually the beginning, even before we thought about the center, we also got a generous contribution or a gift from Yuri Milner, from Yuri Milner Foundation. So this is an opportunity also to thank Yuri Milner and the foundation for helping us in establishing the center and having many activities at Tel Aviv University for combating the pandemic. So I'm very grateful for all those people that I've mentioned. You know, now I have certificates here that I just show you. Of course, they will be mailed to those wonderful people. So there is one for Yuri and Yulia Milner. This is one. And there is one for Yad Hanadiv, which is here. And of course, actually it goes in the opposite order. I should have started with the last. And then, anyway, we have Gary Ryan, Dr. Gary Ryan, and Dr. Katie Field. So Gary and Katie, you are going to get it by mail, so don't hesitate to open the envelope, even though it comes from Israel. And you know, such a big envelope coming from Israel, you might think it's okay, so don't worry about that. And of course, my very dear friend, Sir Frank Lowy, who is the founder, right? The founder of the Institute. So he was the one who helped us to, you know, with startup money to start activities around the pandemics. So, you know, the corona pandemics is still with us today, and one day we believe it would be over, but unfortunately, we are going to have in the future more pandemics. I wish it wasn't so, but we know that would happen. And we at Tel Aviv University want to be prepared. So we want to help the state of Israel, we want to help the global community to fight, to combat the pandemic, this specific pandemic, but also to be prepared for next time. Maybe next time we should do it better, and Tel Aviv University would be part of the international effort to combat pandemics in the future too. So thank you very much to all of you. Thank you also for our governors and friends that you joined us in this evening. I think it's a wonderful enterprise, and thank you very much for being with us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel, and of course, all the benefactors of the center. Now I'm honored to invite Yizhar Shai, the Minister of Science and Technology, to say a few words.
As a member of the Israeli government coronavirus special cabinet, I welcome the Tel Aviv University initiative for establishing a new pandemic center. I believe that the Tel Aviv University Pandemic Center will help with coping with the current challenges of this coronavirus pandemic, but we have to remember that this may not be the last pandemic that we will be facing over the next decades, and so it is very important to establish a knowledge and research center that will be here in order to conduct research, in order to accumulate many new innovations, ideas, and outcomes of research projects that will help the world cope with the up and coming challenges as they unfold over the foreseen future. Such a pandemic center has the potential to impact Israel's positioning as a global leader in innovation and scientific breakthroughs. The universities in Israel and the Tel Aviv University is a leading university amongst them. The campuses, the academies do promote innovation, do provide the Israeli government a strong foundation as it faces various opportunities and challenges, the current coronavirus pandemic being an interesting example as to how the government relies on academic research and the significant support of the universities to promote further various solutions to the challenges.
Okay, Minister Shai, you have our gratitude, and the next speaker is our benefactor, Sir Frank Lowy, and I invite him to speak.
Good evening, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. I am, as you may know, associated with the university in many ways for many, many years. And, when Ariel approached me about this project, I took a couple of days to think about it, but I immediately decided to support, because it's such an important cause, and Tel Aviv University is such a wonderful learning institution, and does, of course, many researchers in this way. So I couldn't refuse. Not that I wanted to refuse, but I couldn't refuse it because it's such an important work that this is being done, and it's so important to have it done, established very quickly. So it is really my pleasure to be the founder of this foundation, and I do hope that it will bring results. I'm sure it will bring results because the Tel Aviv University is well known for producing results. And I believe in results, being results-driven person all my life. So I am especially grateful for the opportunity to do this, to be the founder of this epidemic institute. So there's not much more to say. Of course, the shorter the speech, the sweeter it is and the better it is. So I'm just telling you, Arya, wonderful to be here, wonderful to be a contributor and carrying on my task of working in close collaboration with the other projects that I have with the university to continue to be successful at this latest venture. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Sir Lowy. Thank you for this vote of confidence in Tel Aviv University's capabilities and potential. We are really in debt for making the initial contribution that made it possible to inaugurate our center. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Kathy Fields-Rand to speak on behalf of herself and Dr. Gary Rand. Kathy, please.
All right. The world is suffering from the intolerable agony of uncertainty, health-wise, certainly economically, and more. And we know in our darkest hours, we make our greatest progress. Gary and I would not miss the opportunity to help lift and create the foundation so Tel Aviv University would rise and be the leader as the world suffers with great, great despair. So we are joyous to participate. It was the moment that we felt we also had to participate in. There was no choice. It was easy, and we do it with great joy.
Yeah, if I may, I remember when we were at the Board of Governors meeting and Ariel was talking about the center, and I turned to Kathy and Kathy turned to me, and as Bill Gates said, moving at the speed of thought, we said we have to contribute to this. Being health professionals, we sort of knew this was coming, as Bill Gates has done, and he has put together many wonderful private partnerships with public partnerships to move this venture forward. What this disease has done is shown huge gaping holes in our health systems across the Western world, and this not only applies to communicable, but to non-communicable diseases. And I think there's room not only to discuss pandemics, but to just discuss the other epidemics that plague the world, from dental disease to heart disease. So we think there are big implications moving forward, and we're very happy to play a part in it and forming collaborations not only with Tel Aviv University, but with other universities around the world. So thank you very much. We're honored to be a part of this.
Thank you very much, Kathy and Gary. Thank you for recognizing our urgent research needs and pitching in so quickly and generously. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Asher Reagan, the Director of Academic Excellence Program at Yad HaNadiv Charity, and I would like also to acknowledge Mr. Ariel Weiss, who is the CEO of Yad HaNadiv. Asher, please.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure and it's indeed humbling to be included in such a group of people who've done so much to help the university and help the country more generally. We're very happy to contribute to this initiative, and I don't think we need to spend much time on why it's important now and certainly in the future. I think there was a philanthropist in the UK who said science is the exit strategy in this pandemic, and this initiative certainly reinforces that, and it also reinforces how broadly the science community has to be engaged. In general, building collaborations in Israel's research institutions and top institutions like Tel Aviv with the health system, with government, with public policy are a central tool to fight this pandemic, but it also informs a lot of the work that Yad HaNadiv has been doing in Israel on advancing research and innovation into human health and disease. And a lot of that has happened with Tel Aviv University's wonderful researchers and research programs. And we've seen some very exciting results in partnerships, for example, in a precision medicine partnership that we've had with the Israeli scientific community, with the Ministry of Health, and with other funders have shown how much impact research can have on real life issues if you can just unleash the potential that exists in universities and the ideas that people can bring to bear on the real world. And within the context of this particular center, we, like Ariel mentioned, we asked to focus our own support not on the molecular questions and the biomedical questions here, which a lot of people are focusing on, which we've supported through other means, but it's become abundantly clear today, as perhaps more than in previous days, that overcoming the pandemic requires deep insights not only into disease pathways, but also into Israeli society, and there's understanding how the society functions and what has to happen for it to function in a cohesive and coherent way. So we're very happy to be able to play a small role in this, and we look forward to seeing the results, and we would love in this case for things to be results oriented. And I'm not suggesting that we will measure the success by how quickly you can get my kids back into school, but that would be a really wonderful bonus. So I encourage you to try very hard, and we're grateful to be able to be along for the ride.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reagan. Thank you for recognizing the heavy societal cost of the coronavirus crisis and contributing particularly to that, and allowing us to expand our knowledge for overcoming issues that are not only medical or pandemic or have to do with medicine and biology. Now I would like to invite Professor Dan Pear, our new Vice President for Research and Development, to present our next speaker. Professor Pear.
Okay, so hello.
Hello, Dan. Good morning.
Good morning. I have with me Dr. Heinrich Hess, who is the Vice President of BioNTech, a leading mRNA company. BioNTech, a leading mRNA company that, as we all know now, is also developing mRNA vaccines for coronaviruses. So thank you, Heinrich, for being with us.
Oh, I'm happy to give you some answers, and yeah, so just let's go ahead.
Okay, so my first question is, what are the challenges in a simple, non-scientific term for developing mRNA vaccines?
Yeah. Okay, so maybe one may start with the challenges which are not specific to the RNA, which are applicable for vaccines in general, which is that they need to be safe, applicable to a large community, and convenient and compliant to application to patients, which is the case for all vaccines. For the RNA technologies, one has to take into account that this is a new technology, so it is not yet in clinical practice for the time being. So it means there may be unforeseeable observations which may become critical, which is not obvious at the time being, but still one has to take into account that this is new and one never can see into the future. For RNA technology, the key aspects which are challenging are maybe, first of all, delivery, because the RNA needs to be administered to patient. It's a labile molecule, therefore it has to be protected while it's traveling to the target cell, and it needs to be uptaken by the target cell. Therefore, one needs a delivery system, which mostly are nanoparticles in one way or the other, and these nanoparticles need to be fine-tuned and adjusted to the typical RNA, to the respective RNA format, which is required for the application. So this is a technological challenge in developing the delivery systems. Second important aspect is related to manufacturing, as called by development people CMC, chemistry, manufacturing control, as we do need to manufacture these products in large batch sizes, because normally for vaccines we envisage large number of patients or persons, healthy persons, which need to be receiving the vaccine. And one needs to develop the manufacturing processes which are applicable at such large scales. One needs to develop technologies to stabilize the product, that it can be provided for vaccination in a stable form at the right storage conditions with refrigerated temperatures and so on. So this is basically a challenge which relates to providing the material to patients, and is particularly important if we go to countries where the cold chain cannot be maintained as easily as in developed countries like Europe or United States or some countries in China.
Okay, thank you. And how do you envision the use of mRNA vaccines in infectious disease, specifically in the current pandemic and in general?
Yeah, well, in the current pandemic, we have to see that RNA vaccines are one technology among others, and it will be probably the first time that RNA vaccines enter real clinical practice for vaccination of healthy patients. So here we have many competitors, and there are different technologies which are being developed in parallel. For the future, there is probably a very, very big option for RNA vaccines to become a very big part of the vaccine product, because it has a large number of significant advantages, particularly for conditions like pandemics, when drug products need to be developed on a very short time scale. Manufacturing of RNA vaccines is much easier, and one can react much faster on outbreaks and manufacture the vaccines, because RNA is basically like a code where I have to develop the manufacturing process once, and then I can manufacture all kinds of vaccines with the same protocol. While for classical vaccines, I always need to at least fine-tune and adjust the manufacturing process. So we see big advantage, particularly in very short reaction times for treating pandemic outbreaks in the future, once this technology is fully developed and under control.
Okay, thank you so much. I wish you great success. and for all of us as well. And thank you for your time. It was really enlightening.
Thank you very much for your interest, and hope to speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, so I just want to say a few more words. Heinrich Hess is the guy who is responsible basically for all our vaccines in the form of RNA, which means that they're anticipating, this is a joint team of BioNTech and Pfizer, and this is what we call the Pfizer Vaccine. So his effort, he's responsible for 1.3 billion vaccines that needs to be delivered by the end of April this year. And they should be approved by next month. So if this will work, this will be the Pfizer vaccine will be the first one in the market, then the Moderna, but you understand that 1.3 billion vaccine is not enough to vaccinate the entire world. So we hope that others like Moderna in Boston also will get approval, and therefore they will, together with GSK, will cover the entire world. Having said that, I just want to mention that also in China, there is 2 other companies, smaller companies that are doing vaccines experiments that are not really public, or at least known to the public. And the same goes with Russia. So there is a Russian vaccine that is around. We don't really understand exactly what is the Russian vaccines. It's just called Sputnik 5, which is a good name. But other than that, we don't really understand from what is its built of. So our hope is that both Pfizer, BioNTech, as well as Moderna and GSK will be providing enough vaccines into the world, and we will be probably more smart in exactly 1.5 months or 1 month from now, where the FDA and the EMA will finally decide. There is also already a date for this, which is mid-November, that they will need to decide if this is safe enough or not. I just want to say that, and this would be my last words, that both big companies are now in a state that they have dosed 30,000 patients. They're all healthy volunteers. And Pfizer also is starting to dose very young kids, basically, as volunteers in the next week from now. So we will know the safety profile, hopefully, in a short time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Haas and Professor Peer. Now, allow me to remind you, the audience, about the possibility of ask questions if you have in the chat box. Now, before I invite the next speaker, I would like to emphasize that the next speaker is a representative of the humanitarian side of our campus. And I earlier emphasized the fact that our center is aiming to be multicultural and multidisciplinary. And there is much to be said about, for example, the history of pandemics. One of my colleagues in the executive board of the center just a few days told me that he was studying the plague in the 14th century. And back then, there were already face masks and social distancing. So there is a lot we can learn from our history. So now it is my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Professor Miri Mohsenzone. She is from the Department of Middle Eastern and African History. She is the head of the Tzvi Yavet School of Historical Studies and the Lester and Sally Antim Faculty of Humanities. Miri is a historian with expertise in studying perceptions of Middle Eastern and other societies on health, disease, and death. Miri, please.
Thank you, Itai, for the introduction. I'm truly honored to be part in the inauguration event of the Center for Combating Pandemics. It is a unique framework, as it is truly multidisciplinary. In this vein, I'm pleased to share with you my own research on history of pandemics, which I will pursue in the center. My research stems from the following question. what does it mean to be physically and mentally well here in the Middle East? My focus is the early modern period, that is the Ottoman Empire. Unlike high politics or great power, health is certainly something that everyone, regardless of religion, ethnicity, and social standing, is concerned about. Thus, through the lenses of health, illness, and death, I understand and explain the great human mosaic of the Middle East. I suggest that lessons from the past are highly relevant to our present realities and ought to inform the decisions we make regarding our future, including combating pandemics. Let us look at a court case in Jerusalem from mid-February 1764. Until the 19th century, the Qadi court, that is the court of the Muslim judge, was the main urban civil institution here in the Middle East. And here I take you into the historian's lab and I share with you how such a source looks like. So this is a page from the court registers here in Jerusalem. In this particular case, mid-February 1764, the Muslim judge was asked to decide in a case of an alleged disappearance of a deposit of silk and soap from the Jaffa port. The litigants are two. One of them is Musa al-Kazemi, a Jew who complained against another Musa, this one an Orthodox Christian, who rents draft animals. The Jew contracted Musa a few years prior to deliver a crate full of silk, hats, and soap to the port of Jaffa. He claimed the cargo never arrived and now demands compensation. Musa, the defendant, on his part, confirmed he was hired for such a task, but argued the delivery was handed over. In his defense, Musa raises several claims. One of them is medical. He was sick with the plague and could not deliver the crate himself, so he passed it on to his assistant. Musa even supplied eyewitnesses who testified that they saw the transaction on the Jaffa wharf. The judge then rejected the claim and forbade Musa al-Kazemi to pursue the matter further. Several aspects of this 18th century plague case are highly relevant. Firstly, although the plague was considered a grave medical condition, it was normally and it was expected to fully recuperate from it. Several years later, we find Musa completely healthy, or at least he does not claim otherwise. Secondly, for everyone concerned, a plague is a normal event that does not necessarily require a radical response. Despite an active case of a plague, the transaction was carried out. In many cases of the plague, civil and commercial life did not stop. Yes, there was a pattern of self-imposed confinement here in the Middle East, at least by some social sectors. At the same time, intercity movement and commerce continued. Likewise, interface contacts were more or less intact, although times of crisis, such as plagues, could set off a wave of intercommunal strife. All these historical conclusions echo situations that are relevant for COVID-19. History teaches us many lessons. History probably won't yield the clinical solution to COVID-19, but there are other extremely important morals. One is humility and perspective. We don't know everything. We may never know it all. Second, diversity and variety. There may not be an ideal solution, perhaps not even just one solution. And third, as epidemics know no borders, combating epidemics transcends social, racial, religious, nationalist, and disciplinary borders. Let us remember that pandemics are a shared experience. So is our confronting them. together. And I want to conclude with thanking our president for the vision for this center. Thank you, Professor Porat. Thank you, Professor Ben-Har, for heading the center, and sincere thanks to all our donors for making it happen. Thank you.
Was I muted? Okay, so once again, I would like to thank Miri very much for the interesting, although albeit short presentation. I mean, that was what time permitted. And I would like to thank once more all the benefactors of the center and the speakers this evening. Let me look at the Q&A box if there are any questions, and I see that there are none. So let me conclude with a brief joke. Now, among the audience here is our previous Vice President for Research and Development, Professor Hennis, who among his many contributions to the university is also very well known for his sharp sense of humor. It seems that Professor Pe'er, the new VP, is more serious perhaps, so I will take this opportunity to share the load of telling jokes. And when you will ask soon enough our colleagues in Israel, what do they think about the Tel Aviv University Center for Combating Pandemics, they will probably echo what Israeli physicians who think very highly of themselves say when asked about a colleague. Say, doctor this and that? Well, he's the best in his profession in the whole world and probably one of the good ones in Israel. So I'll let that sink for a while, but anyway, again, thank you everyone for participating in this momentous event of the inauguration of the Center for Pandemics. Ariel, the president, for thinking about it, the benefactors for making it possible to happen, and all of you, the audience, for participating. Good evening to all.
And thank you, Itai, for taking this mission upon yourself and leading the Center for great achievements. Thank you all for joining us. And again, thank you so much for the very generous friends who facilitated the establishment of this important center. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, Garen, Kathy, להתראות.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, היי שלמה.
Bye, Ariel.
Bonsoir, André.
See, this is a Jewish goodbye. Nobody wants to leave.
Shalom, Alfred.
We could stay for another hour.
Nice seeing you, Gary.
אריאל, אתה רואה את
Oh
אלפרד?
yeah, you too, you too.
No, where's Alfred?
הנה, אלפרד פה.
my
אלפרד,
good friend. So good to see you,
Hello.
Alfred. Hello.
All the best.
Yeah. We cannot hear you, Alfred. You should unmute yourself.
Right. I was very happy to hear all the very important and very nice speeches. Good evening and see you soon.
Thank you.
להתראות
Alfred.
לכולם.
See you. Bye,
Bye, guys.
Bye.
ביי, להתראות.